Hi, this is a story by Jay Williams, and it is called A Bag Full of Nothing. Once upon a time, Tip was standing on a bridge over a slow-moving stream. His pa had just told him a story about a princess and three magic wishes, and Tip looked up at his pa and said, "Pa, is there really such a thing as magic?" And Pa said, "Some people think so." Tip thought for a moment and said, "I think there's magic. I think this is a world full of magic." Pa said, "Well, maybe, but I know that it's time to start getting home." So they left the bridge and started down the cobblestone street. As they were walking, they came upon a brown bag right in the middle of the street. Tip ran over to it, picked it up, and said, "Pa, look at this bag. Where'd it come from?" And Pa said, "I don't know. Someone must have dropped it." "That's right," said Tip. "It was a bird. It was a strange, magical bird that dropped this bag." "Maybe," said Pa. I think it's a magic bag. I think it's a bag full of magic." "Well, it looks like it's a bag full of nothing," said Pa. "Well, it's not. It's a bag full of magic," said Tip. And they started home. As they were walking, they came upon a tangle of blackberry bushes. Tip pointed them out and said, "Look, they're ripe and ready for the picking." So Pa and Tip started picking those blackberries. Now Pa just had his hand to fill, but Tip had a bag to fill. And he put all those blackberries in that bag. And then they walked away from the blackberry bush and they started eating their blackberries. When Pa finished the blackberries that were on his hand, he looked over longingly at Tip's bag of blackberries and said, "I wonder how your blackberries taste." And Tip said, "You want to try some?" "Why, sure," said Pa, and he reached his hand in, and as soon as his hand was inside that bag, Tip said, "You see, Pa, it's not a bag full of nothing. It's a bag full of blackberries." Said Pa, and he ate blackberries, and Tip ate blackberries until every last one was gone. And then Pa said, "Well, it looks like it's not a bag full of blackberries anymore. It looks like it's a bag full of nothing," said Tip. Just then they got to the crossroads in the middle of town. Now Mrs. Goodyear was sitting on a bench, a bus bench, and she saw Tip and Tip's pa. Tip saw Mrs. Goodyear. Now Mrs. Goodyear was nice enough, but she loved to pinch cheeks. She would go up to good little girls and good little boys and pinch their cheeks and say, "Oh, aren't you a sweet thing?" Tip did not want his cheek pinched. And he said, "Pa, let's cross the other way." And Pa said, "We can't do that. She's already seen us." So Tip took the paper bag and put it right over his head, held on to Pa's hand, and walked across the street right by Mrs. Goodyear. Mrs. Goodyear said, "Hello, Tip." "Well, hello, Tip." And Tip said, "Blah." And as soon as they walked away, Tip said, "In my, and all the bag full of nothing, and the bag full of my head." And Tip's pa said, "What?" Tip lifted the bag up off his head and said, "You see, Pa, it's not a bag full of nothing. It's a bag full of my head." "Oh," said Tip's pa. Tip took the bag off and laughed. Pa said, "Doesn't look like it's a bag full of your head anymore. It looks like a bag full of nothing." It was about that time they got to the end of the village. And there was Mr. Huff's house. Now, Mr. Huff was all right, but he had this little dog that loved to. So if the gate was open, you had to run like lightning. Well, they got close enough, and Tip saw "The gate's open. We gotta run." And Pa said, "No, we're going to stand our ground." Well, that dog of Mr. Huff's came out from behind that gate and started running right for him. Tip took the bag and that bag, and the dog skittered to a stop, turned, and ran back to the safety of his yard. Said Tip, "You see, Pa, it's not a bag full of nothing. It's a bag full of noise." And Pa said, "It looks like it's a bag full of holes now." Tip looked at the bag and realized it was a bag full of holes. Said, "Well, maybe it's not a magic bag after all. Maybe it is just a bag full of nothing." And Pa said, "Well, I don't know about that. You know, in the stories, there's usually 3 adventures and 3 magical wishes. So maybe it is a bag full of magic after all." And Tip said, Wait a minute. Does this mean I need to marry the princess and live happily ever after?" And Pa said, "Well, how about if we get some ice cream and live happily ever after until dinner?" And that's the story by J. Williams called A Bag Full of Nothing. When the library and the independent bookstores open up again, I sure hope you go and look for this book and read it in its book form. Hope you're doing well and hope you're finding lots of magic around your house. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Bye for now.